This new moon in Scorpio takes place at 28 degrees on the 20th of November, and it's a particularly emotionally charged one. In this video, I'm going to break down why that is, what Mercury retrograde is doing, because that's pretty significant, and some rare aspects that are also occurring at this time that make this a pretty special and dynamic new moon. I'm also going to show you some real life examples of how this can play out in someone's life, and I'm going to give you a breakdown for each rising sign. But first, a quick introduction. I'm Shika, I'm a Western tropical astrologer, and I'm also a jewelry designer. You'll be able to find my collection of one-of-a-kind pieces, such as this, and my zodiac jewelry on my website. And you can also book an astrology reading there too. That is at www.shikazuri.com. Now, before we get into the new moon itself, it's important to look at what Mercury is doing, because Mercury is shaping the tone of this lunation. So this new moon is occurring here in the sign of Scorpio, and we can see Mercury is right next to the sun. Before this, though, a few days before, Mercury is retrograding back from Sagittarius into the sign of Scorpio. Now, Mercury retrograde in the sign of Scorpio tends to scatter our focus. But in Scorpio, the tone becomes far more investigative and direct. Scorpio doesn't tolerate superficial conversations, and Mercury here wants to uncover motives, patterns, and emotional truths that may have been overlooked or avoided. However, Mercury, when it moves into the sign of Scorpio, is initially combust. That's because it's so close to the sun. So that means that the mind can feel overwhelmed or overpowered by our emotions. Combustion can create tunnel vision. It actually amplifies our fears or suspicions, even if they're not grounded in real facts. Now, as Mercury moves backwards into the sign of Scorpio, it's going to make an opposition to Uranus down here in the sign of Taurus. And this adds instability, disruption, and quick changes in our thinking or communication. So people can be blunt or blurt out things or change your stance overnight on something. This can create breakthroughs, but it can also trigger conflict or shock, especially if communication has been building up pressure for some time. So that would be if you've been ignoring something that wants to come out. Uranus wants authenticity. So this opposition creates the sense that something needs to shift, whether that's a belief, a plan, or the way that you communicate. Now, all this sets the stage for this new moon in Scorpio. And at the exact same time as this new moon, Mercury moves into cazimi. It's sitting in the heart of the sun because it's at the exact same degree. So the combust phase leading up to the new moon could have felt unclear or overwhelming, but the cazimi brings something into sharp focus. This is where clarity returns. So you may finally understand the root cause of something, the deeper motivation behind somebody's actions, or a pattern that has been influencing your choices. It can feel like the light bulb suddenly switches on. Now, during a Scorpio new moon, which is already a sign focused on transformation, renewal, and psychological honesty, this cazimi becomes particularly powerful, because it opens the door to a new understanding of yourself or a situation. Now, this new moon is also supported by trines to Jupiter in the sign of Cancer and to Saturn and Neptune in the sign of Pisces. Jupiter in Cancer expands themes of safety, emotional security, home, family, and nourishment. So this trine helps you to find meaning, support, or emotional wisdom in whatever transformation is taking place under this new moon. Then the trines to Saturn and to Neptune add structure and spiritual depth, because Saturn provides grounding and discipline. It's helping you to take responsibility for your next step rather than acting impulsively. And Neptune opens the intuitive channel. It's helping you sense what feels aligned rather than being driven by fear or ego. So together, these trines are stabilizing the intensity of this Scorpio new moon, and they're encouraging constructive change rather than reactive change. I've spoken a lot more in depth about this grand water trine in a previous YouTube video. If you'd like to know more about that, please do go and check that out. Now, the other really important thing of note is that this new moon is opposing Uranus in the sign of Taurus. So this introduces unpredictability. So even if you set clear intentions at this new moon, which you're actually encouraged to do, just know that the outcomes may shift because Uranus disrupts everything that's no longer sustainable. So if something does change, just look at it as a reminder that transformation rarely follows a structured linear path. So this is the general energy behind this new moon. To bring this to real life, let's look at real chart examples that show how this new moon can manifest very differently depending on where it lands. So here are two example charts. Let's start with this first one on the left. Now, let's say that we have a woman in her late 40s. Let's call her Lisa. And she's in the middle of a career transition. Lisa has Scorpio rising, so this new moon is falling in her first house. This is a house of herself, her identity, how she shows up in the world, and how people perceive her. Because this is a new moon, this is resetting something in this area of life. It's a new beginning. Now, Mercury cazimi here gives her a new understanding of who she is becoming, especially after years of burnout, for example. The opposition to Uranus in her seventh house may trigger a sudden shift in her professional relationships, perhaps a mentor leaving or a collaborative partnership breaking down. Now, at first, this may feel disruptive or destabilizing, but the trine to Jupiter from the new moon in her ninth house can open up a new path, let's say a new educational path, or a chance to work with someone who aligns more closely with her values, perhaps even someone from a foreign land, because that's what the ninth house represents. Then the trines to Saturn and Neptune in her fifth house can help her anchor her creative purpose and trust that this change is ultimately beneficial. Now let's take this example on the right-hand side. So in this chart, let's say we have a man in his early 50s. Let's call him Victor. And he's experiencing significant financial restructuring. So he has Leo rising over here, and that places the new moon in his fourth house of home, family responsibilities, ancestral patterns, and emotional foundations. These are all the kind of themes that are being activated. So for Victor, Mercury cazimi can bring clarity about a decision tied to real estate or a family matter that's been hidden or unresolved. And then the opposition to Uranus in his 10th house may bring unexpected changes to his work, such as a sudden shift in leadership or job structure. Now, once again, even though this can feel unsettling, the trines to Jupiter in his 12th house and to Saturn and Neptune in his 8th house can help him to release outdated financial commitments and trust that a more aligned long-term plan is emerging. So what initially feels like a disruption becomes an opportunity for a more stable foundation. So I hope these two examples illustrate how this new moon can play out. And also remember, when I'm doing a personal reading for you, I'm also looking at your personal chart placements and how they're being activated to bring more layers of information through. So now let's see how this new moon in Scorpio is impacting each rising sign. And if you have planets or angles around 28 degrees of any of the fixed signs, that's Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, you are more likely to feel this lunation. So for Aries rising, this new moon activates your 8th house. This involves themes regarding shared resources, finances, psychological patterns, and endings that create space for renewal. So expect insights about boundaries around intimacy or money. There could be unexpected shifts in your personal resources or obligations may push you to make firmer decisions along this axis. For Taurus rising, this new moon falls in your 7th house of relationships, contracts, and partnership dynamics. These are the themes that are coming into focus. So a conversation or revelation may transform how you relate to someone. Uranus in your 1st house may push you to break outdated relational patterns. Now, for Gemini rising, this new moon is occurring in your sixth house of work routines, health habits, and your responsibilities. These are the themes that are being highlighted. So you may gain clarity about what is no longer sustainable in your daily life. Uranus in your 12th house may expose hidden stressors or subconscious habits that are being brought up to the surface. Now, for Cancer rising, this new moon lands in your fifth house. So, creativity, children, romance, and your creative self expression are activated. You may uncover a deeper desire that has been pushed aside. Uranus in your 11th house may shift your social circles or your long term goals. To Leo rising, this new moon is falling in your fourth house of home, family, ancestry, and your emotional foundations. These are the themes in focus. So, old emotional narratives may resurface, allowing you to actually rewrite them. Uranus is going to be in your 10th house, and this may bring unexpected career changes that impact your sense of security. For Virgo rising, the new moon is occurring in your third house. So communication, siblings, learning, and your local environment come into play. A conversation or even a piece of information may shift your perspective. Uranus in your ninth house may push you to rethink a belief or a long-term plan. Next, we move to Libra rising. The new moon activates your second house. So money, self-worth, and your values are highlighted. You may gain clarity about what you need to feel secure. Uranus is going to be in your eighth house, and this may bring unexpected shifts in shared resources or debts. For Scorpio rising, you guys are the stars of the show. This new moon is occurring in your first house, so your identity, confidence, and personal direction become central themes. You may feel compelled to reinvent aspects of yourself. Uranus in your seventh house may create sudden shifts in relationships or commitments. For Sagittarius rising, this new moon is falling in your 12th house. So this is a time of release, reflection, and internal transformation. Hidden fears or patterns may become clear. Uranus in your sixth house may disrupt your routines, forcing you to find a healthier balance. Now, for Capricorn rising, this new moon is happening in your 11th house. So, community, social networks, friendships, and future goals can come into focus. You may reassess which alliances support your growth. And Uranus in your fifth house may shift creative or romantic interests unexpectedly. Moving on to Aquarius rising, the new moon lands in your 10th house. So, career, public identity, and long term achievements are highlighted for you. You may understand a new direction professionally. Uranus in your fourth house may bring changes to your home life or your emotional stability. And last but not least, Pisces rising, this new moon activates your ninth house. So your beliefs, travel, education, and purpose are being highlighted here. A new understanding about your worldview or your direction can emerge under this new moon. And Uranus in your third house may disrupt plans or communication, prompting you to pivot. So thank you for sticking with me. I hope you enjoyed this video. And remember, if you'd like to book a reading, you can check out my website. All my services are at shikazuri.com. Have a wonderful new moon in Scorpio.